Welcome to the Chamber's Elevated Conversations podcast. And now, your host, Dave Eckmann.
Hi, my name is Dave Eckmann, President and CEO of the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce. We'd like to welcome all of you to another edition of Elevated Conversations. Today, I have a very good friend and unique guest that I believe everybody should know in this community. Mr. Bob Becker, been a long-standing Wausauian citizen of this community, and we'll allow him to share his story a bit with that, but then also a business citizen, a long-standing member, past Chamber of Commerce, and in the business community, well-respected. Now, Bob, welcome to our conversation today.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
It's good to see you. And today I'd like to cover a lot of ground with you and really cover some things that I think important for everybody to understand. First, Bob, if you would, how about a little bit about yourself?
Well, I grew up in Wausau on the west side on 3rd Avenue. Went to Wausau High, went to the NTC, and had a very fun growing up period during my time at Grant School, which I'm very pleased is still sitting there today, and many endless memories can hit me every time I drive down Bridge Street. So I later went to the senior high. I was probably one of the few city kids that took ag. And I always never regretted that because not only did I learn a lot about farming, which at one time I thought I was really interested in, but many of the high school friends of mine in the town of Maine and the town of Stettin and the town of Texas and all through that area are still great friends today. So I always cherish that.
Yeah. So when you grew up here in Wausau, when did the business or entrepreneurship bug bite you, Bob?
Well, I worked at the YMCA for 4 years, and one of the guys that used to come in there almost every day was Bob Geisel. And I got to know Bob very well, but I had no idea what he did until one day when I was in a marketing class at the NTC, the old NTC, down by the kayak course. We went on a field trip, and so happened that it was Geisel's studio, and I was really struck by this guy that took pictures, made movies, and made a living. And the very next day, I went back there and put my name on the list with Barbara Geisel that if you ever needed anybody, I would certainly love to have a chance to work here. So it's only a few days later that she did call, and I started working there. I really wasn't looking forward to leaving the Y, the best job a kid could ever have. But I knew I was going to have to move on. So, so I started working for Bob just after school, driving delivering things. He always asked me later on, he'd say, what the hell did you deliver? We didn't have anything to deliver. So anyways, I little by little became more involved there, and that's how I started in the business that I eventually continued to do.
Yeah, absolutely. A long-standing business. So, as you've entered a new stage of life, right? You have. One of the things that I find most interesting is when I speak to you is your connection to the past and for the vision of the future. And you had just mentioned something to me that it really rings, I think, for a lot of people. So you talked about NTC being down by the kayak course. Now, I think you're probably referring to the UW Extension County buildings at this point. Something in that area, correct?
No, the original Wausau Vocational School, which became Wausau Tech, and which was headed up by Larry Hoyt, was located in the buildings where the Marathon County Parks Department is.
Okay.
That whole stretch there.
Okay.
And that building was actually much longer, and in fact, that is the original building of Marathon Electric. Marathon Electric began in that building, and in 1940 is when they built the West Side plant. So that's where I went to school. I think the new NTC was built around 1970 or so, somewhere in that area. And of course, a lot of the credit for that goes to Larry Hoyt and Mel Laird and guys that worked on building that school to what it is today.
Right. And that's the thing about you, Bob, that I enjoy the most is that as you grew up in this community, you're willing to share the stories of the past. And a lot of people didn't know that about that building, I'm sure, that had not grown up here or seen a transformation, because now it's the county and it's the USDA office here locally, and UW Extension. And it's by a world-class kayak course of which you referenced at the beginning. And so the world changes, and you've been part of the change here in Wausau.
Enormous change. When I started in 1968 with my business, most of the companies in the area were all home owned. It didn't matter if it was the First American Bank or if it was the paper mills, Zimpro, Wausau Homes. Wausau Homes is still, as is Greenheck, but so many other companies began to sell out, and things changed quite quickly in my regard, because in the marketing efforts that I was providing for some of these companies, it could immediately disappear and be relocated to their new central offices, wherever that might have been. And fortunately, there were many others that came along and have thrived, as we see with Wausau Supply and with Line Tech, and although Line Tech is still owned by Apogee, but many tremendous employers here that continue on.
Yeah, that's interesting that you bring that up, Bob, that observation that as an economy grows and we become more global or more national based, that a lot of those opportunities that we've had here are lost to other communities because of a natural growth and the progression of things. I recently, you and I have been going back and forth and sharing thoughts and pictures. You have a different lens right now in my mind as you really use your history and your background in this community. It's these types of pictures. I'll say it's you taking us back to yesteryear,
right?
Of very, very specific locations within the community. And why don't you share with us how it is you got to this type of media?
About 3 years ago, I helped Sam's Pizza redecorate the inside of their stores. And one of the images that I had was of Clinton Street. Well, Clinton Street doesn't even exist anymore. But I wanted to create a piece of art that depicted and showed the the original location of Sam's, which was on Clinton Street across from the huge Curtis Millwork Company. Clinton Street once was about where the Covantage Bank sits today. If you drew a straight line from the end of the Scott Street Bridge, or the bridge on the west side, to the front of Wausau Awards and Engraving, that was the path of Clinton Street. Sam's started in 1958, and so I took that photo and I transformed it into that era, and that was kind of the very first one that I ever did, and I kind of got the bug to do another one, which happened to be, and these are all areas where I grew up, or many of them, although some of them that I've done now are further parts of Wausau. But I just got the bug to do more. So the second one I did was the one that you just held up, of the beginning of Washington Street, the end of Scott Street. That area is still exactly the way it is, except the only building that remains in that photo is the Chicago Northwestern Station, which is going to be your new headquarters. And that's a fabulous move that you guys are making there. So I kept doing more and more of them, and so many of these street corners that we were familiar with as growing up are completely transformed. Some of them are, as for Clinton Street, it's not even there anymore. But many other corners are so completely transformed that there's nothing there that was there in the 60s. And when I was a teenager and growing up.
60 years ago. So you think about that, because we're talking about transformation, Bob, of a community, and you've lived it.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
You watched the Wausau Center come.
Yeah.
You're watching it go. It served a terrific purpose for this community, for the downtown economy, but it's time for transformation.
Right.
Could you just share from your perspective the importance of transformation as we grow as a community and an economy? Your perspective, please.
I think one of the things that I came to realize as a young guy starting out in business, that I almost believed in my head that everything was going to stay the same. There was always going to be a First American Bank. There was always going to be a Marathon Electric. There was always going to be all these different companies, a Hammer Blow, Tool, and on and on. And it didn't take long until into the early 70s or so that I started seeing companies change hands, and were already transforming, and they continue to transform. Of course, the mall is a huge transformation. Only a few years ago, none of us would have ever imagined. But it is definitely something that you need to realize is happening. Change is perpetual, and some of it we don't like, some of it we do, and I think in the case of the mall, there's no question that it's going to be a tremendous asset to move it away, to raise it, and create something that will be lasting for the next 50 years or more. And so that's what I see and have experienced. Even though when I was a young guy, I thought everything would stay the same.
Yeah. So the pictures the renderings you're doing, do you have a website, Bob, that you can direct people to?
I really don't, and I need to do that. I think one of the things that I was hoping to get to, and I've done 19 of them now, and I decided that unless I had at least 19 or 20 or 25 of them, that I probably couldn't really do much with it. But now that I have so many of them, I do plan to do that. Some of them are located in the Washington Square. Mark Craig wanted to put those up, and I thought that would be great, and so we did that.
Yeah. They really are special.
Thank you.
Folks not aware, but we are as an organization, we're working hard to preserve Clark Island Powerhouse, which was a power generating station that was built in 1908. And we're working to preserve that and turn that into a economic development campus, which also includes the depot. And in the campus at the historic Clark Island building will be an Industry 4.0 center, of which it will serve our business industry and in an education portal hub, if you will, to connect education to business and industry. But the depot that Bob's referring to, this was built in 1898, but the chamber is pursuing right now to secure this building, the depot, which is historic. It's a good place for the chamber to be in this next century, for certain, with what's happening downtown at the gateway, at the portal coming in to the community, along with Clark Island. Something special is starting to develop here. You captured it. You captured its history and its opportunities for the future right here in this picture.
Thank you.
And we appreciate that very much for you doing that. So, Bob, in closing, I noticed a couple guitars in your background. It looks like one of them is an Ovation.
Yes, it is.
Based on the top of the guitar and then the inlays.
Yes, it is.
Is that yours?
That's an Ovation legend, signed by Vince Gill. Actually, Vince Gill played the guitar.
I'll be darned.
Yeah. So I've met him a couple times. And
how about you? You play guitar?
Every day.
Really?
I started hanging out at Jerry's Music when he first opened, when I was about 12 years old, and so I started playing then, and I play every day, and I've played ever since. So
how long you been playing then? 50, 60?
60, yeah, 60 years, over 60. Yeah.
Well, you got to be pretty good.
Is a Gibson J200, which is another very iconic guitar of Gibson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to put you on the spot. Some not today, but some other podcast, Bob. We're gonna tune you in.
Oh.
Maybe it's down at the depot where we can do this face to face.
That would be great.
And Bob picks out a few songs.
Yeah, I certainly would be happy to do that.
All right.
I don't play in front of a whole lot of people, but I enjoy doing it whenever I'm asked.
Well, terrific. Well, we're going to ask you. There'll come a good place and time. Bob, thanks for your time today. You are a special friend to me, this community.
And likewise, I really
appreciate you.
Yes, thank you very much.
So with that, I want to thank you for your time, and everybody. This is somebody you should meet. He's a tremendous citizen and individual in this community, Bob Becker. So, Bob, thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dave.
And this is this edition of Elevated Conversations. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This podcast episode is a production of the Greater Wausau Chamber of Commerce.